I have a very small confession to make. I am not always as safe as I should be in the workshop. I know that's going to come as a shock to everybody because you are all super safe in your workshop, but the reality is that most guys, especially the hobby woodworkers, are probably going to be a little lax on the safety sometimes. Now we got those guys who will come into the comment section and nitpick every little detail about the safety aspect of the video. I mean, I had somebody complain about my shoes one time because I was wearing sneakers in the workshop. Like, dude, only reason I'm wearing pants in the workshop is because I'm filming for YouTube, not worried about the sneakers. But there are definitely some things that I could do to improve my safety, especially around this table saw here. Now, I do use a push block. I'm pretty consistent with that, especially if I'm cutting a narrower piece of wood, because the push block is going to keep my fingers away from the blade. And this one has a little bit of an offset. I bought this, I don't know why. They're pretty easy to make, but I bought this a long time ago. You can just use a piece of plywood to make a push block. But you might notice as I'm pushing this through that there is no kind of blade guard or riving knife on this table saw. And that's because I took that thing off as soon as I bought it about 15 years ago, wrapped it up in plastic, and it's been sitting on a shelf ever since. I keep thinking maybe one day I'll want that level of safety, but no, I probably won't. Because this thing kind of gets in the way. It's not one of those cool riving knives that'll go up and down with the height of the blade. This one is permanently sticking up and covering the blade. So if you try to cut a dado, you got to take off all your stuff apart and go down there and unbolt the thing just to cut a dado and then put it back on. So I got rid of that thing and I use other methods to just try to keep myself safe around the table saw. I have not cut off any fingers yet, but I have gotten pretty close, especially when using jigs. So safety glasses are pretty important. Most of the time when I put these on, it's because I'm filming for YouTube and I know somebody's going to say something. A lot of times I do the old the squint safety glasses, or if I'm cutting something with knots, I will put on some safety glasses, you know, like pine or something with any kind of loose material embedded in the wood. I might even put on a face shield, go over to the lathe table and put a face shield on, because I don't know if you've ever been hit in the face by a flying knot. It is not fun. So anyway, using a push block, I keep my fingers away from the blade, but I do, just going to admit it, I do habitually reach around the blade to grab that piece of wood off of the other side. I should have an outfeed table. I know that. I'm not going to get an outfeed table because that little space right there between the camera and the table is the path to get to the washer and dryer, because I'm working at home, right? This is a hobby wood workshop. So I can't put anything back there that's going to block up space, and I could put it on wheels, but then I just got to move it around all the time. These are all bad excuses, but we all have them, right? I haven't done it yet. So today I decided to make a big improvement to my safety, and it really cost nothing. And here's what the trigger was. I was pushing this piece of box elder through the table saw, and I switched over to my thin kerf blade. It's a thin kerf ripping blade. Put a blade stabilizer on one side because I wanted to get a nice, clean glue joint quality edge on here. So with this push block, I can not only push forwards, but I can also push to the side so that I keep the piece of wood against the fence. I have my fence aligned perfectly with the blade and with the miter slots, so I don't have any issues with, you know, getting halfway through the cut and I start to hear the grinding and pinching back here. And likewise, if I'm cutting a wider piece and I'm ripping down the middle, the front doesn't start to cut the other board. No, it's perfectly aligned, so when I push this piece of wood through, it's going to hit the front teeth the same as it'll hit the rear teeth. But if it comes away from the fence at all, then I'm going to get some scratches and some unevenness that are going to prevent it from being a good glue joint. So I will push down and also over at the same time. And what happened today, because this plastic on the bottom is a little bit hard, it makes it also slippery. So I was almost through with my cut, and this thing just slid over to the fence like that. And that's a small thing. You can still finish the cut with a little bit of scratches, but the problem is when you go sideways while you're pushing down, you might also push over, which is going to wedge this piece of wood into the blade, and then it can get caught on that piece and flip it up and hit you in the face. That didn't happen because the front of this thing is pretty good for just holding that board down so it doesn't move. It did mess up my cut. And full honesty now, I have done this before where I put my finger on that piece of wood as it's going past the blade to hold it over onto the fence, because if I just try to hold it in there with a stick or something, that's just going to slide. That's no good. I've seen people have push sticks that they use to push on the side of the wood like that. That's not a great idea either, especially if you have a wider board. You're going to end up pinching the wood into your blade, and that's going to cause a kickback. So some of you may be judging me right now because I'm admitting to all these safety failures, but the reason that a company like SawStop has been so successful is not because woodworkers don't put their fingers near the table saw blade. All right, even the guys who are willing to invest in a SawStop put their fingers near the blade, and that's why they need the SawStop. And every time somebody tells a story about, oh, this thing saved my fingers, yeah, that's because you were putting your fingers too close to the blade. We all do it, even when we're concerned about safety. But some of us upgrade slower than others in the safety department. So I know the advertising that compare the cost of the SawStop to the cost of your finger, and I really want a SawStop, but that's like $3,000, right, for the lower end of that, and I got a $50 copay to get my finger sewn back on. So I want the SawStop saw, but I'm not ready for it yet. Anyway, getting to the point, yes, finally. Here's the little improvement that I made today. I just grabbed a piece of scrap wood and I put some electrical tape around the handle, just because actually it was split on that end, and I glued it back together. So I put some electrical tape on there to show me where the handle end was, and I hot glued the other end. I just grabbed my glue gun and just smeared it on there, and that has just enough friction that it lets me move this piece of wood around. So from here on out, because I spent 3 cents on some hot glue, I can push with my push block, but for something like this where I don't want it to go to the side, I want a finished glue joint edge, I can also push downwards on the back so that I make sure that my cut is perfectly along the fence. And then, yes, I'm still going to reach around here because I don't want to block the path to the washer and dryer. But that's a big improvement. At least now I don't have the urge to put my fingers this close to the blade and actually reach over it, because that's the bad idea right there. But I also won't have the concern of having to push over with the push block and sliding into the fence. And yes, I could buy a gripper for $80, but if you don't want to spend $80 on a gripper either, you can spend a few cents on some hot glue. And if you don't have a hot glue gun, you can buy one for pretty cheap, and that's gonna give you another option for keeping the wood off to the side and not in your blade and not in your face. So that was the long way of saying, put some hot glue on the end of a stick and improve your table saw safety. Thanks for watching.